So, why is building teams and hiring great people so hard, especially for churches? And I think there's two main reasons. One, I know from personal experience in seminary or Bible college, they never trained us on how to lead teams well. I got a lot of Bible training. I got a lot of obviously theological training, church history, but I didn't get anything about how to lead teams, manage teams, build teams, hire multiple people, make sure that they work well together. None of that was covered. I think the other thing that makes it really hard for hiring and building teams for a church is when you do hire someone onto your church staff, you are also you're not hiring the spouse, but you're bringing the spouse and their families into the church community. And if they end up not working out over a year, it becomes almost impossible to actually fire them. And so churches have a really hard time hiring well because we don't have a third party or objective way to know if they're going to work out. We kind of go on our gut and we like the person and we just, let's see how it works. And then 3 years later, we realize this isn't good. And we just wait until we can move them somewhere else. And so I found a tool that I think is going to be a game changer. And here's what it's done for us. And I want to pose the question to you that if you could know these things, would it be helpful in building teams and hiring people, right? If you could know how your staff and volunteers work best, if there was a way for you to figure out how they work and what they need to be in a good environment to thrive and where would they thrive on our team. If you could know how to build teams that have high impact, teams that work so well together and that are so productive that they make a huge difference, an outsized difference on your church, in your church. And what if there's a way for you to identify strategy gaps that you might have, to identify who might be on the edge of burnout, and then who should we actually hire next? Of all these people, who should we hire next? And it's called Predictive Index. Our church has been using it for about 4 or 5 years now, and I've helped several other churches get onboarded onto Predictive Index. And so what I want to do over the next few minutes, this is like a full day in-person workshop, but what I want to do is I want to quickly just go over a few of the highlights of what Predictive Index is, and then I'll show you how our church is actually using it and some of the really cool things that you can do. So at its heart, if you think about it, most churches, they have a really good ministry strategy. They have a ministry philosophy. They know the plays that they want to run, whether that's discipleship, evangelism, life groups, youth group, kids ministry. We know what to do. And we know the results that we want, whether that's more baptisms, certain number of growth in church attendance, next steps that are taken. But there's this giant gap in the middle. And while most churches can articulate a strategy and a lot of churches have goals, they cannot articulate what is in the middle. And that is a people strategy. This people strategy is literally, how will you build great teams, hire people into those teams, and then equip leaders or managers of those teams to make sure that those teams are thriving? The vast majority of pastors and churches that I talk to, they know that that's important, but they have no clue on what to do. And so that's what Predictive Index does, is it offers what's called a talent optimization platform. And it gives you, at its core, 3 very effective tools to use to do this. The first one is called design. This is where you're literally designing dream teams. You're designing your team on paper. Think of it like a football team. We're going to design the perfect football team that we need to win the Super Bowl. Next is we're going to draft high impact players into this team that we've created. And then next, we're going to give all of our coaches the right tools that they need to lead these players in the team that we've built to get the results that we want. So design, hire, and inspire. Design is where we build great teams. Hire is where we can look at volunteers or outside candidates and see if they'll fit well into our team. And then inspire is where we're going to give the leaders the tools that they need to lead these teams at a high level. And so I'll show you what predictive index will look like. I'll show you this first. This is kind of what a predictive index profile looks like. We can see this midline that's right here. We can see an A, B, C, and D drive. And then we have +1, +2, +3, -1, -2, -3. And so I want to show you this first, and then I'll show you what it's doing. So what Predictive Index does at its heart is it has a behavioral assessment. And what this assessment does is assesses those four, what they call drivers. And that's great in and of itself. But once you have your entire staff and your volunteers taking this assessment, think of it more like bricks. Once we have all these bricks, now we can build a bunch of really cool things, whether that's teams, job targets, behavioral snapshots, burnout reports, ideal team makeups, personal development charts, relationship guides, factor combos. We can build all of these things with those. And so what it's going to do is it's measuring these four drivers, those four things that I showed you, the A, B, C, and D drive. What it's doing is it's measuring drive, what they call drive A, and you can see this midpoint right here that we talked about, and then those lines +1, +2, +3, -1, -2, -3. You can see that if you're on this side, you have more of this drive. If you're on the left side, you have less of this drive. And what this is measuring is the drive to exert one's influence on people and things around them, or the desire for impact on the people and things around them. The B is measuring the drive for social interactions with other people. C is the drive for consistency or stability. And then D is the drive to conform to rules and structure. And so you can have a lot of that drive or you can have a little of that drive. And the reason that the drives are so important is because in traditional psychology, you kind of learn that behaviors are what we see, but what we don't see are the drives and the needs that people have. The needs, you could ask a person what they need, and they might be able to articulate this a little well, or a little bit, but they probably won't be able to. Most people are not self-aware enough to know what are the things, the hidden things that actually drive them. And so normally in an interview, you can really only see this, right? You can see behaviors, you can talk about it, you can talk to their references, but you're really guessing on what drives them and what their needs are. But what Predictive Index tries to do through measuring those four drives is actually say, well, if we can measure these drivers, then we can actually predict their needs and their future behavior. And so that way we can get a really good determination on whether they're going to be a good fit into our church culture, into our community, and specifically into that team and that specific seat on that team, that very specific role. Do they have what it takes to succeed at that role? And so with these four drivers, we'll skip over kind of this stuff here, but I'll show you quickly to keep with this drives, needs, and behaviors. What we see here is, here's another version of this, right? They have a little bit of this drive or a lot of this drive, this midpoint, and this is a standard deviation curve. But if this is the drive, right, and their dot may be placed here or here, to go back to mine, this is my actual profile. My A drive is on this +2, right, or a little bit over this +2. Right, so my A drive is right over here. So that is a lot of this drive. So knowing that I have a lot of this drive, going back to this drives, needs, and then behaviors. So we're going to say if this is my drive and where I'm at, then these are my needs. I have a high need to impact or influence the people and things around me. And so because of this need, now we're going to layer on top of this behaviors. Determined, assertive would be a behavior very consistent with my personality type. And we can kind of see this. Independent, we can roll this over here, and it says the drive to exert one's influence on people and events, right? So it's saying I'm more independent than I am collaborative. If my dot were over here, that would be actually the need to collaborate. And so you can see with all of these drives, the drive for social interaction, we have drives, needs, and behaviors. Stability, we have drives, needs, and behaviors. And then conformity to rules or structure, we have drives, needs, and behaviors. And so what this will end up doing, here's another example of another profile or a pattern, is this pattern is really going to show us how God wired us. Now, Predictive Index is not a Christian company, but as pastors and as someone who uses Predictive Index on almost a daily basis, I can layer a Christian worldview over this and say that this science-based approach to looking at what drives behavior is a window into how God wired someone. And so this pattern is what I would say is your default settings, or what comes naturally to you. And you can move a little bit one way or the other, but not a lot. You're not going to move, totally over here or totally over here. This is how God wired you. And you can stretch like a rubber band to meet certain needs or environmental pressures for a little bit, but this is your default setting. This is where you want to come back to. To look a little bit more closely, this is a look at this pattern. You can see the midline here. This is called a sigma, and this is where a dot can move one way or the other. And so let's look at this. When you're reading a profile, there's a couple of things that you want to look at. One is the dots, where the dots are on the pattern itself. But the thing that's actually going to tell you the most about a person or the potential behavior that they may have is actually how those dots relate to each other. It's called a factor combo. And so what we can think of a factor combo, it's kind of like a UFC match between these two drives. So if we're looking at this person's profile, the factor combo between A and B, we're going to look at which one is stronger, which one's more to the right. And so if these two drives were in a cage match, who would win? Right. So for this person, the A drive is always stronger than the B drive. The need for independence and impact on the people and things around them is always going to win over the need to socialize with people. And so what this will tell you is that this person is a task-oriented person. Now, the further this dot, the further these dots are away from each other, the louder that expression gets in their life. And so going back to my profile, I am extremely task-oriented. The drive to impact the people and things around me, hands down, will win always over chit-chatting at the water cooler. That's just not part of my personality. And so you can see how if the B was winning, then they would be a people-oriented person, right? And so these drives affect our needs, how they interact with each other, the behaviors that we see, and they affect decision-making. And so there's actually 6 factor combos that are possible. There's the A and B, which gives us task-oriented versus people-oriented. A versus C, which tells us if they're more of a proactive person or a reactive person. And that's because the drive for impact is, if the drive for impact wins over their drive to keep things steady, that's going to be a proactive person. But the opposite, if the drive to keep things steady always wins over their drive to impact, then they're going to be responsive. They're going to let things come to them. A and D is their risk profile, whether they're comfortable with risk or cautious with risk. B to C is how quickly they connect with other people, whether they connect quickly or slowly. B and D is whether they have informal or formal relationships or interactions with other people. And then C and D is, are they careful with rules or are they casual with rules? And so we can kind of see these extreme, this is me, right? We can see these extremes, how these different variations can react. The other thing that's really interesting about these profiles is you can use a person's profile. This profile is a really good example of this, is you can use this profile to figure out how this person attacks problems in their life. And so we'll look at this right here. If a profile was a vehicle traveling to the right and it's about to hit a wall or go over a speed bump or any kind of issue, there's something coming up, what part of their profile hits first? It's going to usually be it's always going to be their strongest drive is going to hit that problem first. That's how they attack problems at work. And so you can kind of see these different examples. This one's actually a really easy example to understand. If this person who their strongest drive is that need for social interaction, they're still independent, but this is a people-oriented leader who moves quickly and is very proactive and comfortable with risk. That's what this profile tells us here. This profile is traveling down the highway this way, and it's about to hit something. The part of their profile that hits first is this B, the need for social interaction. So this profile naturally, when they come up to a problem at work, phones a friend. There's got to be someone else I can talk to that can help me get through this problem. The profile like mine, where the A hits first, very independent problem solvers, they're going to make decisions quickly and then move on. Probably not get a lot of input from other people, but make a decision and then move on. This person, where the C hits first, this person is usually going to, remember, their main drive is the need for stability. So they're going to slow everything down to make sure everything's okay and it's not going to happen again. And then this person with rules and structure hitting first, they're usually going to say something like, what rules or process or procedure, policy can I put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And so you can quickly see how someone might problem solve in certain situations. And then thinking about that in the role, there's probably certain ways that you want certain roles to behave as opposed to other ones. Right? A great example would be a person that you want to go church plant, a completely autonomous church somewhere all by themselves. You would want to be highly independent, as opposed to someone who, let's say, is your CFO or the person that handles your taxes. You want them to be not independent. You want them to be collaborative to tell you what's going on and very cautious with rules. There's only one right way to do things, and we're going to make sure we do it the right way. So it's not that one's right or wrong. It's just each one is right for a particular role. And as Christian leaders, I think it's our job to find how God wired someone and then find a seat for them that perfectly fits what they're wired to do. Another thing that we can look at here, this is just a little fun, but there's 17 different reference profiles, and you'll get a little badge that tells you what you are. This is kind of how they look as compared to these drives and where they fall. And some people will see a profile and say, hey, this looks just like this profile, but I got a different name or whatever. And it's helpful to think that these profiles are not like continents or countries. They're more like neighborhoods, where this promoter is in a promoter neighborhood, but their profile actually looks very similar to a collaborator who's right here, where a promoter that's way over here doesn't quite maybe look the same as that. There's some science-based rules on what the patterns are and what profile you fall into. But like for me, I'm a venturer, but my venturer profile is really close to a captain. There's just a little bit of a difference on a captain and a little bit of difference on a maverick. If one of these dots moves a little bit this way or a little bit that way, then I would actually be a captain or a maverick. And so I'm in the venturer neighborhood, but I'm right here. And you can kind of see this is a bigger example of kind of where these different profiles. There's analytical profiles. They all have this cog here. There's social profiles, which have this hexagon shape in the back. There's stabilizing profiles that have this triangle. And then there's persistent profiles that have this circle icon here. So that's a quick overview of what the profile assessments look like. But what I want to get in here and show you actually what Predictive Index looks like when you actually have an account with it. There's different modules and things up here that we won't get into, but I just want to show you this part right here. So this is the profile. You can see that midline +1 +2. It gives you helpful descriptors of where these things are falling in line. Remember, we look at the dots, which one's strongest. We look at the combos, what they are, which combos are most loud, right, furthest apart from each other. And then the system will actually do this for you. So in Pattern Insights, we can see that it's actually listing my drives from strongest to weakest. Strongest being further out from here, and weakest being closest to the middle. And so you can see here that it gives me some descriptors of my behaviors and then my needs, right? So I am very independent, assertive, self-confident. I need lots of independence, control of my own activities, and I need a challenge. The rest of these are moderately, right? It's within here, but it's not too far out. This is kind of more extreme. These are kind of more towards the center or quieter. So this is moderately introspective, matter of fact, analytical. I need some opportunities to reflect, right? I need lots of independence here. Moderately informal, free from rigid structure, moderately restless, driving. I need variety. And then it's giving you my strongest combos. Now for me, this is called a solar system profile, where there's clearly like a sun and all of these other things rotate around this one need because it's so extreme. So everything revolves. My strongest combos are always going to be the ones related to my A drive because they're so far away from each other. And so that's exactly what you see here. The system has already put these in order for you, with strongest going this way and then all the way to weakest down here. So strongest, very task oriented, creative thinker, technical orientation, independent, individualistic, self-confident, very comfortable with risk, very proactive, takes initiative, get things done. And then these are called situational. They're so close to each other that in that natural movement of one way or the other, that they actually overlap a lot. And so what this person, me, is able to do is situationally, I can either be quick to connect or take time to connect. Situationally, I can either be informal or formal. And situationally, I can be casual with rules or careful with rules. So the system, you don't have to be an expert. The system puts all of this out here for you. The other cool thing here is that you can get a behavioral report, and we'll do management style and influencing style. And then it's going to give you a very detailed report of this person's behaviors, summaries, management styles, influencing styles, and strategies that they can use to maximize their ability to lead other people. You can also get a personal development chart. So this is going into the inspiring others. So your leaders and your managers would have access to this, where I can pull a personal development chart and give this to an employee, and it will have strengths, caution areas, self-coaching tips based on where their individual drives are. And so it does that for all four. But then it also does this as a manager. So if Brian was going to be leading other people, I can actually get a development chart for him as a leader, leading a team of people, how his profile, what the strengths are, what the caution areas are, and then really practical self-coaching tips. So for me, if you think about my profile, very independent, more reserved, don't need a lot of social interaction. One of the biggest self-coaching tips that I have is actively seek input from the people that I lead. Practice active listening and think before speaking, right? Because I can be, my drive to impact things tends for me to move quickly. So these are some self-coaching tips for me as a leader about how to lead better. This management strategy guide is now, if I was managing Brian, it's giving me kind of a report card of, am I doing a good job adjusting myself to meet what Brian needs to thrive in this position? You can also create jobs within here and job targets. And so if this person is an employee and they are attached to a job, then you can get a coaching guide. And what this does is, this is the job target. This is where you can find a lot of alignment or misalignment on an executive leadership team. When you figure out, when you get a certain number of people in the room and say, what is an ideal youth pastor look like for us? What is a kids ministry director? What is a first impressions coordinator? Whatever you are calling these things, you get the stakeholders or the decision makers in the room, and we can actually go through a process or a group exercise that individuals will take a different type of survey. We'll bring their answers together and see where there's alignment and misalignment, and then have a really healthy discussion about what does it mean. So for Grace Church, what do we want as a youth pastor at Grace Church? And then we can create a job target. Now, this isn't our job target for youth. This is just an example, but we can see that this job target, we're wanting the A drive to be somewhere in here, B, C, and D. And you can see here that I am a total mismatch here, but these two I fall in line. And so now, if this were a real person with a real job target at our church, now I get 12 very specific questions about this person and their role that I could use in like a one-on-one meeting with them to constantly just help them be the best version of themselves in this role, even though there's parts of them that are mismatches to what we say we want for this role. And so maybe this is someone that it's the right person on the bus, but they're just on the wrong seat right now, and we're waiting for something else to open up, but we can still help them be the best that they can in this situation. Now, if this were a candidate and someone who was not on staff, maybe this is a volunteer who we're thinking about hiring part-time, or maybe even an outside hire that we're thinking about, then you can actually get an interview guide that does the same type of thing. It pulls in this job target. It pulls in this person's profile. So you can see here, I'm a venturer, strengths, caution areas. And then it gives me very specific interview questions to tease out the parts of my profile that are not matching with what the church is saying that they need in an ideal situation. And so you can see here that what they want for this role is much more collaborative leader where I'm independent. So the very first question, describe a situation when you served as a team member rather than a team leader, right? That's literally just pulling at this, teasing out this mismatch in what the church is saying they want and what this person is. And so you can see how this science-backed objective data can really help you understand not only who you're hiring, but also what you're hiring to, the job requirements that you want. And then you can also pull up what's called a one-on-one relationship guide. And so this is a great tool that honestly, my staff probably asks me this once a week for them to pull up. If they're going to have a hard conversation with someone, they want me to pull this report and I can email it to them. But it pulls in one person and it pulls in someone else on our staff or a volunteer. And then it gives us relationship strengths, caution areas, and then tips. And so what you can use this for is, if I have to have a hard conversation with this person, I can pull this up and naturally see maybe some of the things that I'm not self-aware enough about how I lead and how I should adjust this conversation so that this person receives it in the best way. So this is just covering, to go back to these different modules. What we just looked at was just the Inspire module. Was all of these things that we just looked at. And these are the tools that you're going to give your leaders in order to lead these teams well. I'll show you, this is where you can create job targets. Let's look at one of these. This one has a lot of people. So this is what we said we want in an office admin person. Someone who is situationally independent or collaborative. We don't really care which way or the other. They can't be very extreme in these. And we can modify this target, but this was based on a survey with 5 people that would have direct working relationships with these office admins. And then we actually included one office admin that we know is doing a really good job, and we asked her to take this survey so that she could say what her idea of a good office admin was. We want them more reserved because they're going to be working a lot of data entry and things by themselves. We do want them to be driving. So this relationship here, we want them to be able to get stuff done, and then we need them really to have an eye on detail. And so what you can do is, as soon as you make this job target, you can send out this link to unlimited amounts of people to take this survey to see if they're a good fit for your job. And then once you have these people in here, you can actually filter them based on 1 out of 10 match. And then literally, we have these 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 10 matches, and then we can go through and make interview questions and call them and figure out if they'd be a good fit. And so this becomes just one point of data that you can use in the hiring process to figure out if they're going to be a good fit for the specific role that they have. So that's kind of a really quick overview of the hiring module. This team module is actually the thing that I love most. What we can do with this is it will you can pull in people on your team, and it will put them, we can see the pattern here. We can mark them as a leader of this team, and then it's using that behavioral profile to actually put them on this kind of disc or ball with these 4 quadrants. And we can see that there's different, what these quadrants mean, what they are representing, innovation and agility, high A and high B, teamwork and experience. These are people that are very in tune with others, very highly social. This quadrant is process and precision, high C and high D. And then this quadrant is results oriented, high A and high D. And so you can see that you can put different people on this. And then what's cool is, in the same way that individuals have, so like this is me, I'm a venturer. Just like each person has a kind of a profile, you can get different team profiles. So we can see that based on the people on this team, we are a path-finding team. And you can notice that by this dark kind of area in the graphic here, but that represents that most of our strengths, if there was an average of this, end up somewhere over here. And so we can see that we're a pathfinding team. We can see some details: fast-paced, goal-oriented, competitive. There's a whole pathfinding team page that we can go to, and group activities that go along with this: strengths, potential caution areas. There's some team-based meetings that you can have with this. But what's great is not only can we discover the team that we have currently, but we can also use this tool to do a couple of things. We can go over to this survey and we can say, we'll take these off. And you would ask the question, what does this team need to do on a regular basis that's vitally important? And we can go through here, and you only want to pick maybe 5, maybe 6 at the most. Any more than that, and it's a little too much. But it's a great way to get some alignment on the executive team about what teams should look like. And you can do that for all teams, whether it's an elder team, executive team, kids ministry team, youth ministry team, a campus team. Now we can see that we actually have alignment between what we say this team needs to do on a regular basis that's important. That's the dream team. We're saying that this team requires a path-finding team on a regular basis. So we should be building a team that in its makeup has a strength over here into the innovation, agility, and equal parts results and discipline. So we can find here that we have alignment between what we say we desire as a team, or what the executive team is saying this team should have, and then the current team that we have in place. And so what you could do then from here is go back to this team discovery, and let's say you want to remove someone, but let's say we also want to hire someone else. We're going to hire this person, and then let's see just if we were to hire this person, and I'll make this person a different color. Would this change our team type? It does change our team type. And so now we can see that our strengths are now down here. Now we actually do have a mismatch between the team that we have and the strategy that we say this team should be operating on a consistent basis. So you can see how there can be a mismatch here. The other thing that you can do is you can take this, go back here, do these objectives and use a different question. So now we're going to say, let's say, what does this team need to do in the next 3 to 6 months that's vitally important? Now for our elder team, this is an actual true thing that happened here. Is we had a good season of growth, and because of that growth, we actually needed to focus a lot on some systems and processes that had broken. And so what we realized was, before we were a pathfinding team, which is what we said we wanted, but we're pursuing a stabilizing strategy. All of our short-term goals are actually over here. And so now it's giving us strengths, potential cautionaries because of what we're seeing. And then these takeaways, it's giving us a kind of a detailed roadmap of what this team needs to do to make sure that they can achieve these goals in the short term. And so that is just a really quick overview of Predictive Index. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Brian at productivepastor.com.